We're back out here at the Big Lake once again. And even though South Mississippi has caught up with the rest of the country, there's ice out here, I was still able to catch some really nice fish. I'm going to give up all the juice. Stick around. Got him. Ooh, that one feels pretty good. Oh, goodness. That's what it took. Ooh, that's a good bass. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and it is a wet, freezing day here at the Big Lake. We've had some very frigid temperatures. Yesterday, it never got above freezing, and we've had temperatures over the past 3 days as low as 12 degrees. Now, the country is gripped in an icy blast from the north, and you would say that was going to make the fishing terrible. You're not going to be able to catch anything. And you know what? I was tempted not even to come out here, but I decided I was going to give it a try. And to my surprise, working some really specific techniques, I was able to catch some really nice bass. Now, was I able to put myself on 50 fish? No, but I caught more than I thought I would. I thought maybe I was going to come out here just looking to waste my time. You know, get out here in the cold and freeze my backside off and not get anything. But I actually caught some really nice fish. And surprisingly, those fish, even though we've had to deal with freezing rain, a little bit of snow, we've had sleet, there's ice on the water out here, you know, it's been really cold, you would think those bass were going to move out way deep. But they were actually pretty much in the same areas that they've always been, which tells me that the pre-spawn is just around the corner, you know. And since instinct trumps weather, those bass are going to stay right where they are because they need to feed up because they're getting ready to spawn here in South Mississippi. The spawn in South Mississippi usually kicks off about the first couple weeks of February. So that's literally just around the corner. These bass are going to start moving shallow and they're going to start feeding up very soon. Now, the weather might interrupt that just a little bit, but it's not going to disrupt it permanently. That means that these fish are still very much catchable, not only from the boat, but also from the bank. All of the fish that I caught today were in that zone 2 area that we talk about, right? That area that's about a cast and a half, 2 casts off of the shore, that's maybe 8 to 15 foot deep. That's where I caught all my fish today. And I started today working the good old Yosery jerkbait. Suspending jerkbait. I was using this as a search bait, slow as it was, but then again, everything out here right now is slow. Now, I got a couple of weak taps on it, but I wasn't really able to hook up on anything. And that told me that those fish, well, not only were they not suspended, because this is going to be right in the middle of that water column, they were not really in the mood to chase anything. I was trying to elicit a reaction strike, and sure, I might have been able to get one, but the best way, in my opinion, to go after these bass whenever they get cold like that is to put the bait right in front of their face and basically keep it there. You have to go to them. So I'm using techniques like this right here. This is a modified Texas rig. We've got a split ring right here between the hook, you know, and the string. Got some beads on it, got a 1/4 ounce weight. You know, Tony B calls this the Mardi Gras rig, and I think that works. I think that's kind of neat. So this is what we're calling it. And that's kind of what I'm working with out here. The water's a little bit murky. We've got some stain to it. It has yet to clear up. And this is a perfect, nice and slow bait for that. I can cast it out there. It stays on the bottom right where I want it to be because those fish have got their belly in the mud. Just because they're not pulled off super deep, at least the ones that I was targeting, just because they're not pulled off super deep doesn't mean they did not have their belly in the mud. That's what I was seeing. I'll be honest, you know, I don't have any gadgets, I don't have any gizmos, I don't have any of that stuff on the little boat. All I have are my eyes and what I know about bass fishing. So how did I know where to even start looking? I looked for birds. You know, that was my biggest clue. I was able to follow some blue herons and some white cranes and some kingfishers and even some ducks. And, you know, if you find those things, especially something like a kingfisher, right? If you see those kingfishers or if you see waterfowl in the area, you know that there are fish in the area because that's why those birds are there. The birds are feeding on the fish. So, you know, it depends on what type of fish they're feeding on, right? Are they feeding on perch? Are they feeding on bluegill, sunfish? Are they feeding on goby? Are they feeding on alewife? Whatever. It doesn't matter, but you see birds there and you see that they're in the water doing their thing. There's fish in the area. So they kind of act as my sonar. They let me know that there's bass in that area. That's where I was starting. And again, I was taking this, you know, the Mardi Gras rig, and I was able to drag the bottom ever so slowly. And I got a fish on it now, not the greatest fish, and it was kind of pale like they've been. So that tells me that it was kind of offshore just a little bit, and also tells me that I'm onto something possibly because it was moving up more toward the shallow area. It was actually a very pale, it wasn't, I don't know, maybe about a 3/4 pound or a 1 pound fish that I caught, but it was very pale. And that tells me that they're actually getting ready to move up. And I'm just casting it out there. I'm casting it out there and I'm letting it sit. I'm letting it dead stick. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5 1,000, and more. And I'll find that a lot of times whenever I go to, you know, drag it just a little bit, drag that line just a little bit, that's when I'm noticing that resistance. That's when I'm noticing a fish has got it. Those bites are so faint. For the most part, they can be very, very easy. You know, you don't even notice that they're there. But of course, I had to bring out the tool that's been doing all the damage for me lately. And that's the wacky rig, or even the Waco rig. Right here, I've got a wacky rig tied on. I've got one of the blue spearmint worms that I'm making, and the brown one was another one that I was working today, and the orange one, you know, they were all being rotated around, trying to make sure that not only was I keeping the bass on their toes, but I could find out which color those bass seemed to prefer most. And honestly, they seem to prefer the spearmint color, and they seem to prefer that brown color. Those seem to be the ones that they were actually keying off on the most. Now, I got one fish on the orange one, again, in that 3/4 pound area, and I was happy to have it. You know, don't get me wrong, I was very happy to have that little fish, because I'll take a dink over a skunk any day, and it gave me information. It let me know I'm on the right path. I'm on the right track. Keep doing what it is that you're doing, and eventually you're going to get that payoff. And, you know, it didn't take too much longer. I switched out to a fresh brown wacky rig worm, fresh worm, nice and scented, fresh out of the pack, and I think it was the first cast, and I caught this nice one. All right, we have switched to a brown worm, a little bit fresher worm when it's got some fresh stink juice on it. I'll kind of let that go for a little bit. See if I can get somebody to say howdy now. Got him. Ooh, that one feels pretty good. Oh, goodness. That's what it took. Ooh, that's a good bass, kids. That is a very, very nice bass. Look at that. On the wacky rig. Changed it out. Fresh. beautiful. Look how beautiful that bass is. That bass is right at around 2 pounds. Gorgeous, gorgeous. So even when it is super, super yucky out, we can still get some bites. And that is the name of the game. All right, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. There he goes. So that was a beautiful fish. That was a gorgeous 2-pound fish. Nice color. And the funny thing about it is, I didn't expect to catch anything like that today. You know, I expected to come out here, expected to freeze my butt off for a few hours, pack it in and go home. Here I am catching fish. But what I'm doing is I'm being very targeted. I'm being very specific. Now when I'm casting this out there, I'm always trying to make sure that the wind is at my back. Now that accomplishes 2 things. Number 1, it's a weightless wacky rig, so I'm getting a farther cast. It allows me to work more water, and especially being farther away from the boat. I like being able to work a bait farther away from the boat if at all possible, because I feel like there's less of a chance that that fish is going to be spooked by my presence. So I like to have the wind at my back when I'm casting. It also makes it easier to work that bait because the bait is going towards the boat. The boat and the bait are going towards each other because the boat is being pushed along by that current, by that wind. So I'm able to dead stick it without having the boat dragging that bait along as I move away from it. If I cast behind me against the wind, well, I can still cast, I can still work water, but I'm not going to be casting as far, and that boat's going to be drifting away from that bait, which is going to be dragging it along the bottom. And that's not really dead sticking it. That's kind of the opposite of what I'm doing. So all I have to make sure is that I keep that slack at a reasonable, manageable level so I can set the hook whenever I get a bite. And that strategy is what I've been doing. You know, I've been able to work that bait, casting it out there and letting that current take the scent downstream, letting that bait sit there and dead stick for a while, almost like I'm bottom fishing, right? Almost like you're catfishing, just letting that bait sit there. It was a grind, make no mistake about it. It was very much a grind. But by leaving that bait sit there for 15, 20 seconds before I ever even tried to move it again, and then just let it sit there 15, 20 seconds. Trust me, it was the best way to do it because I was able to encourage those fish who are lethargic, they're beat up, the weather has got them smashed right now, and they may not be in a mood to feed, you know. They just may be turned off and they may have some lockjaw. This is my best way of getting them to go after a bait because after that water is super cold. I mean, normally the water here in South Mississippi in January, we're in the 60s. That water temperature is in the 60s. But right now, because of how cold it's been all winter, which is unusual, that water is in the 50s, the low 50s, and it's been in the upper 40s. That is crazy cold for this lake, and the fish have responded accordingly. But by slowing down and using things like a wacky rig, a Waco rig, and even using a Ned rig, that Ned rig has also been a huge player. Although I didn't use it today, I've used it in the past few days that I was here, and it put me on some really nice fish. But today I wanted to use that wacky rig because I wanted it to be slow and finesse from start to finish. I wanted that bait to flutter down, and I wanted it to sit on the bottom for a few seconds before I began to work it. Now, I'm not fishing deep water, as I've said. It might look like, even though I'm out from the bank, it might look like that I'm fishing some deep water. That water's not more than 6 feet deep at the most where I'm at. So I'm not waiting that long for that worm to go down. And like I said, I'm just casting it out there and I'm letting it fall. I've got my spinning combo here. I've got 10-pound braid on this. You know, this is a 7-foot medium light rod. I've got the braid to a fluorocarbon leader, and we're just using just a regular wacky worm. I've got a Gamakatsu G-Finesse hook, just a regular old wacky O-ring, and nothing fancy. The key to the whole thing is using current to your advantage, like we've talked about, and being patient with it. If you can do those things, even after the coldest, harshest winter day, I'm telling you, you're still going to be able to catch fish. And I bet when I come out here in the next few days, over the next few times, the weather's supposed to improve some, so we will see. But I'm telling you, I believe that I will still be able to catch fish. And I think we're going to be turning around where we're actually going to be getting a little bit warmer, and the pre-spawn will start kicking into full gear. Of course, that means that the lake's going to get crowded again. But you know what? Fishing is fishing. You love to do it either way. My suggestion to you is just fish it slow. Whatever you're using, whether you're using a drop shot, whether you're using a wacky rig, whether you're using a Texas rig, whether you're using a soft plastic jerkbait, whether you're using a hard jerkbait, go slow, be methodical, use the wind and the current to your advantage. If you can do those things, I promise that you will put yourself on more fish than you thought you ever could. So there you have it. A crazy day on the water, more than I ever expected. Freezing cold, freezing rain, and yet those fish were still biting. All you have to have is some patience. And once you can learn how to do that, remember, it's not about luck. It's about manufacturing bites. It's about locating bass and then manufacturing bites. And I know that you can do it. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.